Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon session, track number 4, IK-based bioinnovations and cannabis industrialization. Our topic for this session is cannabis research and industrialization. I will be your moderator for this afternoon. My name is Sinah Mosehla, the director at the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. I work under the Industrial Development and Competitiveness branch. I'm responsible for the cosmetic sector. I develop policy and strategies to grow the cosmetic sector. Not to waste time, I'd like to introduce to you our speakers today, and we do have Professor Matsabisa, we do have Dr. Kunene and Chief Dr. Blessed Okole. We want to apologize for one of our speakers, Dr. Chara Watson, who could not join us in this afternoon session. I hope that all listeners will enjoy the information that we will be getting today from our speakers. Cannabis is the in thing. Products are flooding our market in South Africa. As you go into the retail sector, if you go to the shops, you see cannabis products. You look into the newspaper, they speak about cannabis. Everyone is talking about cannabis, and I'm happy to be the driving person behind this particular discussion this afternoon. Please feel free to type in your questions under the chat so that after the speakers have spoken, you can address or the speakers can answer your questions. Just a friendly note to our speakers, please note that you are only allocated 10 minutes to speak. I know you have a lot of information because you are passionate when it comes to cannabis, but please limit your talking to 10 minutes, please, so that we have enough time to engage with the listeners or the participants. Thank you. Not to waste time. On the program, we have Dr. Matsabisa, or Professor Matsabisa, apologies, who is the professor in the Department of Pharmacology at the University of Free State. His area of expertise is indigenous knowledge system, and he specializes in pharmacology and pharmacology of traditional medicine in drug discovery and drug development. And then another speaker that we have Dr. Thandeka Kunene, who is the CEO of House of Hemp and a co-founder of the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa. Lastly, we will have Chief Dr. Blessed Okole, who is currently based within the research group, who is the research group leader currently for agro-processing in the agriculture and food cluster at the CSIR. Dr. Chief Blessed Okole is currently running the cannabis lab at the CSIR, and we had a pleasure to go there and visit the facilities at CSIR. Not to waste time, let's welcome Prof. Matsabisa from the Department of Pharmacology at the University of Free State. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you so much, moderator. And I think it's a pleasure for me to, to be here and share what we do, on the research and the development of local, land races of cannabis. And honestly, without wasting much time, I would want to get on into, what I want to share with everybody. And my research would literally, take, 10 minutes, that's what I would want, to do. And then I would really wait for questions. The idea really here was we wanted to look at, what we have as a country in terms of cannabis, given the fact that many, people in many countries came in and had what they referred to as the best, performing strains of cannabis. But the work that we have done, at the University of the Free State, where we looked at 14 different, extracts of, cannabis from different geographical areas. That means, all over the world, has actually shown that our local land race was best performing when it came into 3 tests that we did. 1, it was on breast cancer. 2, it was, on angiogenesis and blood vessel formation. And then the 3rd one was, on your PPMs. But what I really want then to show with you was then to justify for us and say, why should we, in fact, focus on our local land races and develop it as an industry? So I want then to say, we want to be different, we want to innovate, and we want to lead. the work that we do, I think it's based on, I think, our newly acquired extraction facility, where you'd see that we start off with your dry, cannabis material. And this is the material that has actually been grown out in the wild. It's not grown anywhere, I think, under controlled environment. It's grown by the local, I think, people. And I'll explain, I think, who we work with. And then the next step, I think, from, I think, those plants, when you do your cold ethanol extraction, is then to obtain, I think, what you call, I think, your concentrate, which is, I think, a mixture of all the different, I think, cannabinoids and the different, I think, terpenes. We then, I think, step number 3 went further then to decarboxylate. What by that we mean that, I think, we had to remove, I think, the CO2, I think, from the acids of, the cannabinoids, and while the other sample was not a decarboxylated one. So we wanted then to confirm, what the differences are. And we could actually see that, I think, from your draw plant material up until you get that extract, the yield is about 10%. So if you start off with 2 kilograms, of your raw plant material, you'd end up, I think, with about, 200, grams. Or you start off with 20 kilograms, you'd end up, I think, by the third stage with 2 kilograms, of your extracts. And then going further then was then for us to purify, because our interest is really to develop proprietary products that are formulated based on, I think, known, I think, cannabinoids and known terpenes. So the third step, I think, was then for us to purify and clean up that. And what you see, I think, at the bottom there in that sort of gold, glass, it's really the cleaned up, I think, extract from your locally grown, I think, cannabis, such a high quality extract with about 65% THC. So this is a high THC content. And to the left at the bottom, that's where we actually took that and then we separated it up into the different terpenes, where you had, I think, your low terpenes, you had your middle terpenes.
Sorry, Prof. Sorry to disturb you. I think the slides are not moving on our side.
Yeah, slides are not moving. Yeah.
And if you can put it on presentation mode, please. Yes, thank you.
So much. So what I was explaining here was really we do, based on, I think, our newly acquired equipment, we then, I think, started off the extraction process from your local land races. And we do this in about 3 or 4 steps. The first step is really to give you, I think, a mixture of, your black extract. The third step would be then, I think, to where we separated up the decarboxylated and the non-decarboxylated. By that we mean they are acids, they are carboxylic acids that we then needed to separate, and we'll show you, I think, the separation. And then the fourth step was then to purify and clean up, I think, that to come up with this nice and gold, extract, which is about 65% of THC. So this is a very high THC content. And then at the bottom left, that's where we separated up your terpenes into, I think, your beginning terpenes, your middle terpenes, and then also your low terpenes. We have proven, I think, the presence of the different cannabinoids through your TLC, and we used, I think, extracts from Welcome, from, I think, Gauteng, from Lesotho, and the Eastern Cape, but all of them in common, you'd see that they all contain, THC, which means these are, in fact, medicinal cannabis. They are DAHA samples, but they do also contain some other cannabinoids and some other cannabinolic acids. Now, we have then separated up, I think, the 3 extracts where you decarboxylated one, you remove, I think, the CO2, and then the other one we didn't decarboxylate. So we expect that we should have some carboxylic acids. And then at the bottom, this is where we enriched, I think, by removing most of those extracts. What did we find? It's very interesting that I think these are all the cannabinoids that we have, I think, found present in the local, cannabinoid strains. You'd see that in some of these, I think, strains, you do not find the decarboxylated one, simply because this is an acid. So when you remove CO2 from that acid, you then decarboxylate it, and then you find it in a non-decarboxylated form. And so we could actually count about, I think, close to 20 different cannabinoids that we could find in, I think, our local strain. So we can then confirm the presence of these cannabinoids in our local land races. Where then did we go? And then we looked at, I think, your terpenes, because I have a special interest on your terpenes. So you had these beginning of terpenes, you have the high terpenes, and then the middle terpenes. So what you would see with the different colors and the little lines literally are the different terpenes that we could identify from, the same, I think, local strain. And this then moves us to saying, how then do we begin to develop unique products that are based on the ratios of these cannabinoids and the ratios of these terpenes? And we have then started up saying we need then to develop, I think, a number of products based on the pharmacology research that we have done. And what then have we done? We did a number of studies in terms of COVID. We have actually looked at all the different cannabinoids and see how then do they, I think, interact with the COVID, SARS-CoV virus, at both the initiation and also the termination sequences of the viral proteins. So we looked at all these different cannabinoids, and we actually found that there is a trend that indeed they do interact, I think, with the SARS-CoV, viral proteins, which is a positive to say these products could actually be developed for cannabis. The second other experiment that we did was to look at whether cannabis can be hepatoprotective, on the liver. And what we then did, we set up a small experiment in a rat where we induced, I think, liver cirrhosis. I think if you see the liver on the top right, that's a cirrhotic liver, that's like an alcoholic liver. And we were then saying, could then the extracts of cannabis reverse that? And in fact, we found that it does do that. At the bottom, I think, left again, we were more interested in the use of cannabis for glucose uptake. There's, I think, cannabis, when it is being used, does it make you alert? Does it really push up your glucose into your brain so that you are sharp, you are mindful? And what we found, in fact, very interestingly, that cannabis does influence the uptake of glucose into your brain. It makes you sharper. But more importantly, we found that it does, in fact, inhibit two key enzymes that are responsible for your Alzheimer or your dementia. Hence why then at I think the bottom, we have a special project where now we're looking at the effect of cannabis and dementia, particularly for the treatment of Alzheimer's. So all these experiments then has pushed us to say there is a need to actually help us, I think, develop an industry, based on our local, I think, strains. Who are the development partners? We work with communities. I think there's a community under the headman chief, Veronica Sikonyela, I think in the Eastern Cape. That's where we got some of these materials. And we want to encourage that these communities, they need to be supported. They need to be given, I think, the necessary, I think, support in terms of the agriculture, because the samples that we have tested were directly from, I think, the fields. They were not under any, I think, controlled environment. Similarly, I think at Ngeleni in the Eastern Cape, we also work under Chief, Nombasa, Vava. Also, that's where we started collecting, I think, these samples. But who are our industry partners? We work with AvaCare Health. This is an international company. They have a special interest, on dementia and cannabinoids. We work with Afrigen. In fact, Afrigen has been supporting some of our postdoctoral fellows. We have a postdoctoral fellow in pharmaceutics who's working with us on developing up an animal model for Alzheimer and dementia and using cannabis, where we reformulate these cannabinoids specifically for cannabis. We have just got into, I think, another, collaboration with Cannabis, House. This is a company in Poland. Again, they were very interested again in cannabis and Alzheimer's. So there is this interest on the use of cannabis and Alzheimer's. GS Labs, I think we work with them in terms of the purification, but there has also been local interest from Adcock Ingram in terms of cannabis and post-operative pain and cannabis and acute pain. I think I forgot to mention that. But then I think my conclusion is, what then do we do? There are challenges, but I think how then do we begin to overcome these challenges? One, I think we need to have a complete genetic and chemical profiling of our local cannabis, medicinal plants. We, I think, within the University of the Free State have done, I think, our chemical profiling, but we should then be moving into our genetic profiling. We need to know what we have, I think, as this country. And some of these things, I think, we have published. A lot of our publications are in Frontiers in Pharmacology. We have published worldwide in terms of the results that we have been working on. The second thing that we want to see really to propose is we need to have a formal commercial agricultural activities where we support communities at the grassroots level. These are the communities that have actually developed and generated these high, THC content of medicinal cannabis. They need just small, I think, support, and we continue to learn from them. And therefore, this justifies that there is actually no need for these high-end, expensive, upfront, facilities that everybody is talking about, because we can actually produce same good quality cannabis that is actually grown in the wild. But there is also an agency from SAPRA to approve licenses for the local research and development and manufacturing. We want to develop an industry here at home. Pity those that would want to have an industry and then say they've got a market overseas. But I think we're saying, let us develop this industry here over, at home, and we have the market here. But we need those doors at SAPRA to be opened for two things. One, to give out, I think, licenses for the research and the development, but also to see that, I think, those communities are being assisted in terms of the commercial cultivation and growing. But lastly, I think it's all about how then do we industrialize, our local medical cannabis, given the results that we have shown that it does in fact perform better than what everybody else keeps saying they've got a better, I think, strain of cannabis. Let us develop our local cannabis strains. Chair, thank you so much, I think, for giving me that opportunity to share briefly, I think, with you what we do. But I am here to, I think, attend and have the discussions and see how we take the cannabis industry forward. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Prof. And really, I do appreciate your presentation, very informative. And I like your concluding slide. Really, it's talking to us government directly, and we are listening. We are currently in the process of developing the Cannabis Master Plan, and presentations like yours really are assisting us in putting together the commercial or industrialization aspect in the Cannabis Master Plan. Thank you, Prof. We now move to our next speaker, who is Chief Dr. Blessed Okole. Chief Doctor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Blessed Okole, like in my introduction, but a chief, a different type. My presentation, I will just introduce what we are doing, the value chains, extraction, analytics, process development, economic application of the hemp and cannabis, and some of our infrastructure. Professor Matabise has covered most of the points I'm going to talk about. We're working closely with him, so I'll try and rush through my presentation to take just around 8 or 10 minutes. We were lucky also to work with University of Free State, and we have most of the local varieties, the flowers, and also some of the hybrid strains from with high CBD and high THC. So we have most of them here in our facilities at the CSR. And we've also done different alcohol-based extraction technologies and optimized them. And we've done crude extract here with higher yields. It's more, when you use smaller equipment, surprisingly, you don't get very high, but we're using a 100-liter scale. We're having yields of almost 15 to 18%. And we've optimized the chlorophyll and wax removal and done some downstream processing. Professor Matabise went through all of that, the winterization, decarboxylation. I don't want to go through all those university terms, but those are the terms that are key in this industry. And now we're working with small entrepreneurs and see how we can improve or reformulate their products. Cannabis goes through a value chain. Like what Professor Matabise said, we work in a team from CSR with the universities and also the ARC. So everybody has his or her strength. For example, agronomy, which is at the beginning, the ARC is very strong at that. So we have a consortium that we're working together on this. Trimming, primary processing, secondary and downstream, that's where we are strong, and we work closely with the universities. We started with the small scale, 2-liter scale, as you can see from the picture there, and then you have your FECO, which are full cannabis extract oil. We learned a lot from here, but later on we said this is a CSR, there's an industrialization I in this CSR, which means we need to go bigger. So we are now on the 100-liter scale. And you can see on the left, that is your cannabis flower milled plant, and in the middle is your extraction vessel that we are using. On the right, those equipments on the right, you can go right up to -20 to reduce your chlorophyll and wax level. And then there's a mixer in the middle at the top there. When you go through that, what happens is that you get your full extract, which is below you. We have a compressor that will compress the oils. So everything goes into it. Now you use a distillation. We use the 30-liter rotavaps, which you can see there. So these are commercial scale, which you can apply in bigger facilities, or you can use for smaller communities. We've perfected now to get the yellow gold, as you can see on the right, and how to remove the color. We've developed certain technologies at the CSR to remove the chlorophyll and the waxes. And we also went the same route. If you do most of the extraction, you want to be sure of what is inside. Do you still have the key cannabinoids? It took us some time to get this right, but we finally got it right, and we identified most of the key cannabinoids. See, it's from here now that we can start working with all the pharmacologists, to try and start formulating, like what Professor Matabisa said, different combinations of CBD and also terpenes, to try and see how you can look at different therapeutic areas. These are some of our vessels. So we've gone right down to spray drying. And this is what you have when you have your spray dried crystallized your product. It goes through a process. You start from winterization, filtration, decarboxylation, distillation, right up to spray drying crystallization, which I showed you. On the left is the CBD, right? And on the right, we at the CSR, we've gone a step further. We have a group, the Nano Technology Group, that is now producing Nano Cbd. The Nano Cbd is more soluble and can absorb faster than your normal CBD. These are just some of the uses. I tried to push these 2 slides on the uses of hemp, which all of us know. It has millions of pulp, consumer textiles, and different uses. But what is important for me here is, this is marijuana or cannabis. Both of them are marijuana cannabis. One is shorter, the other one is taller. One has high THC. The cannabis marijuana has high THC, while hemp has low THC. But what is important for me is that we've reached that stage in South Africa here that we can start thinking of different formulations. And I will also go to some slides highlighting what Professor Matabise said. We're also focusing on the local strain. And if you look here, this is the oil. We can do it in South Africa. We can go right to this stage. We can have the distillates. We can have the isolates. We can have the oil. What is preventing us? So the technology is in the country. I got this from I can't see clearly, but I got this from one of his presentation. He is an advocate of cannabis and Henneman. And I'm going to say almost the same thing like what Professor Matabise said. You know, we have to move regulations from the Department of Health to, especially for hemp, from health to agriculture. That is currently going, I think in October is going to happen. And to regularize the utilization of our existing genetics that have grown in South Africa. They are drought resistant. They are currently being grown illegally. We have to make sure that we help these small farmers to be in the system. We call it inclusive growth with the smaller farmers. And from what Professor Matabise said, we are in a consortium, all of us in a group, and we are using our existing genetics as starting research materials for most of the work. That is the only way we can differentiate ourselves from others. And also to try and see, when you do that, also to improve the access to cannabis pharmaceuticals and complementary medicine. I heard from my friend that they've started issuing licensing for cannabis to certain pharmacies. So that's a step in the right direction. The other point I wanted to make also is the shift in the current supra-medical licensing. It's very expensive, like we know. not so affordable for smaller farmers. Something must be done in that area. And we should not only focus on the export market, we should also look at our local market. And then the last point I wanted to mention here was to encourage academic medical cannabis, encouraging medical cannabis research, exploring new medicines, which we are currently doing. These are some of the products that we're going to start working with entrepreneurs. We have South African entrepreneurs who are very ingenious, and they come up with fantastic products. The problem is that most of these products can't be sold in the international market, even in our local market, because they have some flaws. For example, the one in green on the left became hard during the winter period, some bubbles inside. So those are some of the things that we need to use science and technology to bring these products to international standards. And we're going to work with a few of them to see how we can get their products to that level so that they can also start country, but out of the country. We also have to make sure that we get permits and all the relevant documents. We did some work with hemp, with House of Hemp, CSR, ARC. We have some hemp varieties. We are revitalizing that particular program at the CSR. We have now a consortium with the CSR, IDC, NMU, and also we're trying to get some funds from Treasury. This was a very good job, but after a period, it just died, but we are revitalizing that particular program on hemp also. These are just some of our unique facilities at the CSR. And my last slide is just to explain what the way forward, where we are going. I think Professor Matapisa said this, I'm also saying it again. We need to profile our local varieties. CSR has permits, just like the University of Free State. We have 3 permits also for growing, product development, and also for downstream analytical studies. And then we need more products in the formulations using our local varieties. We're working with University of Free State, our Nano group, and universities. And then we now start working with SMMEs that already have products in the market. We'll make sure they have the right permits so that they are not working illegally, and also try to work with them to formulate or reformulate their products. Human capital is very important. Matabise also said that some of us will not be so long in the system again, so we need to train people, young scientists, to have PhDs, masters, so that they can be the leaders in this area also. And we engage in a lot with the provincial governments. We engage with Gauteng, Eastern Cape, KZN, Free State, and also private sector. And we have so many MOUs, NDAs, and RCAs. These are some of the members in our consortium: University of Free State, Pretoria, ARC, Druze, Indalo, El Paso, Department of Science and Technology, which is putting lots of funding in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chief Blessed Okole, for that presentation. Very informative indeed. And it's really humbling to see that researchers are also partnering with industry, because what is the use of developing a prototype and then shelving it? So I'm really happy to see that both 2 presentations, the professors are partnering with industry players so that we can have offtake agreements or license partnerships, and then we can benefit from this cannabis in terms of finished product that can benefit us, that can heal us, that can make us get excited, in a good way. So thank you so much to the 2 speakers. Dr. Kunene, I'm still struggling with checking if you did manage to send through your presentation, because it's not reflecting in my emails. If you can please indicate if you are struggling to send it through, I think you can talk to your presentation. We still want to hear from you, because you are, in fact, the first license holder in South Africa for cannabis. So we can't miss this opportunity to hear from you. Please, Dr. Kunene, if you can indicate.
Hi, Doc. I've sent it to you. I've also sent it to myself on my email. Can you check it?
Yes, I've been checking the email. It's not reflecting. Let me keep on checking.
Let me.
Oh yes, yes, it is. It is reflecting in my email, but the screen. Okay, yes. Let me open.
I'm trying to share the screen. So what must I say? Share my screen.
So go to share the screen, and then you will see the presentation on, and then click on it, and then say share again.
Sorry, I've done that.
You've clicked on the presentation. There's a point, it will say share. We almost got it. Yeah, we can see our screen.
Okay.
Click on the presentation.
Sorry, it's not coming. Doc, you can't do that for me. And then
I also have it on. I can put it up.
Yeah. Okay.
If technology can allow me.
Will the technology allow you, Doc? And then I can just
I'm trying from. Can I try, Dr. Kunyana, from my side? I think I've left it up just now. Can you see it?
Okay, there you go.
We can see our presentation.
Oh, you can see.
But put it on slide mode. Yes, we can see.
You can see.
Oops.
Is this fine?
It's fine now. Yes,
that is fine. That is fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, BioAfrica. Thank you so much for inviting us again this year. I am the CEO of House of Hemp, the first company that got the commercial license, the 17 of us now. And last 2 times I was here, first I talked about what's the road to go where you're going to go. And then last year, I presented the basic, the things that you have to show when you're doing your business plan. So today, I just want to go one step further, which is, what does this animal mean, industrialization? I come from a background of applied maths, a PhD. I work for CSIR. I am into innovation, but after we've innovated the good works that Dr. Okole and Professor Matsabisa do, after we've innovated, then what? Next slide. So basically, if you look at in South Africa, not in South Africa, the cannabis, there's 3 main opportunities: is the seed, is the stock, and is the flower. And I always encourage people that they must zoom into one area and perfect it. And of course, I zoomed into the flower after actually having walked the stock, the seeds to the flower. So at that time, I thought that was the best thing that I did to go to the flower, because you were looking at CBD, $2,000 a kilogram, $2,000 a kilogram, THC, $5,000 a kilogram, compared to even omega oil, 200 a kilogram, or the stocks, fiber, 20 Rand a kilogram. But the road to identifying the opportunity, the road to reaching the opportunity is a long road, and that's what is called industrialization. Next slide. Okay, so also over and above those direct opportunities in the value chain, especially for your bioscience, there's opportunities across agricultural biotechnology. Like right now, the ARC is looking for partners who will partner with it for them to finalize their breeding, especially looking at our local local cultivars. They would give us a competitive advantage and how to take it to the market. Health biotechnology, vaccines. There's a big thing now. The COVID, anti-COVID mixture that was coming from Madagascar had mhlonyane, and it had a bit of cannabis in it. You know, could we be working our own herbs into vaccines, in particular, let's say chest-related vaccines like the COVID? Industrial biotechnology, biofuel. Shell right now has come out blazing to say, okay, they'd be interested to do cannabis biofuels, and then bioenzymes, biomaterials, nanotechnology, fibers for food and things like that, and then cross-cutting sectors. Next slide, please. Okay, the first thing, you've now identified the opportunity, which was there's 25,000 different product uses of cannabis. So let's zoom down. Now you've identified, like me, I want to produce CBD and THC. The first thing is the license, long road to license. Professor Matabisa talked about how do we make sure that our people get the license, because that is quite expensive. The long road to license, we must not undermine it. Without the license, you can't do anything. Actually, if you don't get the license, it stops right there, the road that you are going to go. And you need to do all your documents, and that's why you need your pharmacist with you, you need your scientist with you, you need your finance person with you, you need your quality control person with you, you need your master growers, and you have to have all your documents in place. Then there's a number of vetting processes that the police go through. And then once you've applied and you've passed the vetting, then Department of SAPRA, the regulator, just Department of Health, but now it's done mainly by SAPRA, who's partially independent. They do the site inspections. They look at the site, proof of lease, the site buildings, the quality systems, not just the talk, the quality systems in place, the security. A lot of people fail on the security, standard operating procedures. They want to see all of them, supply value chain, offtake contract, at least your first one, personnel requirements, organograms, and then your compliance plan. Next slide. But now you've got the license. And the license, the most important thing about the license is that it gets you, I remember having a sense that now the world is your oyster, because South Africa is signatory to so many regulatory regimes that once you have a South African license, a SAPRA license, a lot of doors in terms of markets are open for you. Next slide. I have a license, so what? We are back to entrepreneurship. I think I did this in my first presentation 2 years ago. You are just another business startup, and this is where it is painful, because up to now, you've done so much work, and you are just another business startup. And you have to go through stage one, which you've actually just finished the conception of it, and quantifying the opportunity. Now you must go to the stage two, which is really the gathering of the resources, and then you set up, okay, and then you stabilize and you grow. So the license, and it's a lot of work to get there, has just given you stage one. Next slide. Now I'm in a stage two, gathering. How am I going to get this business going? And there's four main highlights. Do you have a market? Do you have a strong proposition? Are you able to gather the resources? And do you have the right team to actually make it work? Next slide. The large and fast growing market, with no doubt, even after the best of the cannabis bubble, which saw people like a Supreme and a Canopy Growth, and the Stanley Brothers become billionaires. Now what you have is the bubble is gone, but there's a growing market. There is a rapid growing market in the cannabis. It's an existing industry that is being revamped into a legal industry. Therefore, there's a whole lot of things happening there. We definitely have a fast and a large market. Next slide. Then, okay, for me, it wasn't just to look at the market. Could I get an offtake myself? So the question on the is there a large and growing market is, can you get an offtake, somebody to buy from you? Next slide. And I can knock places. So I got Sweden to give me a letter of indication. Okay, remember, you cannot get a letter, you cannot get an offtake contract without a sample. So the best thing to do is to get letters of intent. Otherwise you'll be stuck. So off I went. Sweden went there, got an offtake, 20 tons. Next one, UK, got an offtake, 20 tons. Then got an offtake with a high THC, offtake with indoor THC, Switzerland. hemp CBD, that's what they want. USA, lots of biomass they want. Canada, they want seed, or you could press it for them. Germany, hey, we've got a partnership in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. We want to set up on automobile panels. So can you provide us with fiber? And it doesn't matter whether you take it from DACA, high THC, or you take it from industrial cannabis hemp. German partner with BASF here, they say we can set up a MTF manufacturing in KZN. The automotives was in Eastern Cape. My focus, KZN, Eastern Cape, because I learned to appreciate cannabis in the Eastern Cape with the Pondo people, and I'm Zulu myself, and my license is in KwaZulu-Natal. So those are my two priority provinces in South Africa. Because Professor Matsabisa is right, we must focus in South Africa. Then I got a shock. A South African pharmaceutical company, that I won't mention its name, they have registered a product with a SAPRA, and they need 800 kilograms of API a month at 4,500 USD. I'm like, okay, now we are happening. And then every day I get local people saying they want responsible adult use, which would include the healers. They want to do mixes in cannabis, but they want a secure source. And the Rastas, they want to smoke something that is, they know it's natural and it can be guaranteed. And then you have all other people then who just want to do the smoking, like the tobacco industry. Next slide. So now you've got a large market and I've got real offtakes. Now I must look at two things. Do I have a real proposition and do I have a timely opportunity? And in my case, yes, I can produce high THC with licensed flower. I've got someone who can extract it for me, Afriplex in Cape Town, who can extract it on a GMP facility. So, and my price will be better than everybody else in the world. Timely opportunity, the time is now. In fact, the time was about 7 years ago. Our government was slow. I'm sorry to criticize the government, but it's true. And that's why we missed the opportunity to be made overnight billionaires. Next slide. And then part of my strong proposition in my case is my site, is my location, is in Durban, and Durban has got a name in the cannabis. The last 20 years, Durban Poison has been the best selling cannabis cultivar, single best selling cannabis cultivar in the world. And I'm in an SEZ, I've got a number of incentives. So I've got a very strong proposition. Next slide. Then I need the right team. Most important, the technical skills. If you cannot produce that API as according to what that Swiss wants, forget it. The team must be able to operate, must have the know-how, must be able to operate. It includes master growers. Then I also have to make sure I'm compliant with regulatory. So I need my chief compliance officer, I need my quality assurance, I need my responsible pharmacist. Then I need the guys who keep on selling for me, because as you can see, if you add it, I've got 100,000 kilograms of cake, of letters of indication sitting with me. So my give me 20,000 kilos. So I've got another 80,000 that I can talk to CSIR, ARC, UFS. Let's go to the people in the rural areas, in Tabankulu, in Bergville, and get them to produce same quality that I can grade in my pharmaceutical grade. So I'm happy now because I've got to have not only for myself, but for the others. And then I've got to have a team, finance, fundraising, infrastructure. I've got to have legal and security. I've got to have a security as part of compliance. Next team. So these are the key skills that I need. And I need this accreditation, GACP, General Agricultural Collecting Practice, General Security Practice, good laboratory practice, good manufacturing practice. I don't have to have the GMP myself. I can have my partner Afriplex who can produce for me, and then export and import licenses. But with GLP, from a biotech conference here, you need to be able to do CBD and THC profiling. You need to be able to do heavy metal test, pesticide test, microbial and mold test, salmonella test, E. coli test. Salmonella and E. coli, sometimes like E. coli, especially for the water, I get a lot of, I want to turn my alkali water into CBD infused water. I need to have an E. coli test for my water. Those are I have to have a GLP facility who will give me the certificates, and that GLP must not necessarily be mine. Inside my factory, I've got an internal lab, but I need to have a verification. And at this moment, I use someone like NSAF, NAFSAS. Without that, I can't move on. Next slide.
Doctor, please, 3 minutes left.
Okay, fine. Next slide. I need to be able to gather the resources. I need my product, I need my offtake, I need my technical team, I need my business plan, and I need my management team, I need surety, and I need 10% of my own contribution. As a historically disadvantaged person, I can't move forward without that. Next slide. Operational capability. Next slide. Next slide, you're going back, next, going forward. And the answer there is, can I gather the resources? Then if I can, then I can industrialize my unique opportunity. Next slide. Which I am the best. I've got a 30,000 greenhouse. I've got capacity of 55,000 kilograms of biomass. I can be a leader in my industry. I use technology. I've got the right products, and the products are simple, cannabinoids. Next slide. I've got license, offtake, operational capacity, finance. Then I am able to industrialize. Just to tell you where I am, I got a Sweden and a Nigerian firm come in, and all my people will shrink to 20%. That ability to gather resources is the most important. So after all the work I did and gathering everybody, I end up with 20%, but it could be 20% of a $2 billion industry. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Doctor. It was worth the wait, and thank you also that you did manage to get your presentation on. I've really learned a lot from your presentation, and it's good to see that industrialization is possible. We shouldn't be deterred by the fact that South Africa is still working on regulations. In fact, the world at large, we are still working on getting our regulations to allow us to industrialize. Okay, so Dr. Kunene was our last speaker, and I will be opening up the floor to questions. We will start with questions from the chat sections. But before we go there, I just have one question to Professor Mathabisa before I forget it, because I know I can allow people to ask questions, and then at the end of the day, I wrap up without asking mine. Prof. Mathabisa, you spoke about partnering with foreign companies. Is the partnership on South Africa giving them the technology, the know-how, plus the raw material that we are currently growing here? Because your R&D was done, I assume, was done on cannabis that's growing in the southern part of Africa, but you are mentioning the companies in, the western part. So what sort of partnerships will you be entering into? Is it license sharing or?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for that question. Just one thing that I just want you to check. I'm not so sure whether Dr. Watson has joined. Maybe just check with her. I think she might have been here.
I'm here.
Dr. Watson, please, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for accommodating me. I know I logged on very, very late. The difference in time kind of got me a little bit off. So my sincere apologies for logging on late. Not to worry, I definitely want us to have our questions and answers. So I'll be very, very brief. We're actually in a lockdown here in Jamaica since Saturday. So there are no movement days, so we literally can't move. My husband, incidentally, is an essential worker and he's heading out. So I'll be stuck with the 3 kids between 5 and 9 months. So my background will get a little bit disrupted very soon. So I'll make it very, very quick. Of course, thank you very much, BioAfrica, for inviting us. Our Jamaican South African bilateral partnership is very important to us. And we have been meeting and talking and doing a lot together as governments and as institutions. So me being here today is a part of that continuous relationship that we have been building. Now, as it relates to the topic of the discussion that we've been having this morning, just want to give you a quick update of what has been happening in Jamaica, especially since 2013, when the world finally caught on to cannabis and what it is and the full potential of it, and moving it from a highly regulated and illegal substance to one that is an important one and a part of any forward-thinking healthcare system. Now in Jamaica, as you might know, we have always been active in the cannabis space in different aspects. We were there doing research in the 60s and 70s, and we sometimes boast to say we are one of the first countries to actually commercialize pharmaceutical grade cannabis products. This happened in the 1970s, where we commercialized 2 cannabis products, one for asthma and another one for glaucoma. So we have been there, we have been doing the research, we have been doing the work, we have been doing commercialization, but the scale at which we commercialize product is questionable. We tend to do at relatively small scale, not having the global impact that we can and should be having. Now, fast forward from the 70s when we were trailblazers to 2013 when the whole CNN interview and the globe now started looking at cannabis, Jamaica was there again. And in that time between 2013 to 2015, our Ministry of Health, our regulators started putting things in place to say, hey, we cannot ignore the significance of cannabis in our local space anymore, because most persons, when you say you're a Jamaican, they associate you with 3 things: running fast, Bob Marley, and of course, Rastafarianism. Of course, and they associate Rastafari with cannabis usage because it's one of the materials that is sacramental to them and is utilized in their spiritual and religious practices. So you cannot separate Jamaica from cannabis. You can't separate Jamaica from ganja. So we were there at the time. I was working with Dr. Henry Lowe. He's a pioneering scientist that not just focus on cannabis, but look at indigenous materials and how to translate them for general health and welfare of our people. Sorry, my daughter is coming in. Yeah, please. Of our people. So he has been a trailblazer and a pioneer of indigenous knowledge translation into value creation. And we were there at that point looking at cannabis, and we were in this current period, one of the first companies that was actually able to work through with our regulators and actually registered 7 products that are now available in pharmacies. So the process that Dr. Tandeka mentioned just now is very similar to the process that happens here in Jamaica. So I won't repeat it because it's almost identical. But just to say that it has happened, it can happen, and we have a system now in place where you can actually register and apply for various cannabis licenses. There are 5 different licenses depending on where in the industry you want to operate. We have very active cannabis cafes or herb houses that are operating right across the island. You have cannabis retreat as well as magic mushroom retreats. I don't know if that is something now that is happening in South Africa, where you have the psilocybin market kind of twinning with the cannabis market and getting a lot of activities. Then we also formed a national nutraceutical industry task force, and that was very critical because one of the main tasks for that task force was to review the Dangerous Drug Act which looked at incorporating not just cannabis, but natural health products. So all our herbal preparation that we want to move into the commercialized space, that we want to make available on a large scale, we were now looking at the regulations and the legal framework that we can do that under. And we were very, I would like to say we're very smart in setting up that task force. We kept it extremely lean, because you know, the more persons operating in any kind of group is the less effective or efficient they are. So we kept it very lean, and we actually have those regulations and the revised Drug Act now with our cabinet for review. So, and that happened in a space of about 3 years. And if you know regulations and moving through the process, that can be considered to be rocket fast. So we're very proud of that. We're pushing it, moving it forward, and that will allow more persons to operate in a framework that facilitates greater participation and will help you to get greater success. So that is just my quick summary of what is happening here in Jamaica. Again, thank you guys so much for having me, and my sincere apologies for not having my presentation up and also being late.
Thank you so much, Dr. Watson, for honoring us by coming and making your presentation. We really did learn a lot from what you told us about Jamaica. Of course, when I look at cannabis, what comes to my mind is Jamaica automatically. I don't know, but yes, because of Bob Marley and your history. But thank you so much. Without wasting time, there are quite a number of questions that participants posed to us or to the speakers. So I will go through the questions very quickly and give each and every speaker 1 minute to respond to the question you feel comfortable to respond to. And I'm hoping that we will be able to cover these questions, all of them, when our speakers are responding to the questions. First one, are there any engagements with Western Cape government with R&D in cannabis plants? Next question, are there breeding trials being conducted to evaluate and improve local varieties? Next question, can we use biotech tools for gene editing? Is this a promising stream for R&D? Next question, are there any established seed banks? And then next question, are there any promising development of cannabis-based textiles and building materials in South Africa and in Africa? Next question, is the CSIR currently conducting any research on biofuel or biogas using cannabis? And I think our last question is, okay, yes, it's an answer. Dr. Okolo did respond that CSIR is conducting research on biogas, but on food waste and not on cannabis. So I will open up the floor to the speakers, giving each one 1 minute to quickly respond, and then we wrap up. We will start with Chief Dr. Blessed Okolo. Please, if you can respond, one minute, please.
I think it's just to answer on the one which was directed to me. We're doing work on biogas, but it's not on cannabis. We've not reached that level, but we are doing work with food waste with the United Nations Development Program. There's a program going on right now. But thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Okolo. Professor Matabisa?
Thank you so much, Messina. I think your question was to me earlier on whether the arrangements that I have with the international companies, you know, what are they about? They are not about any materials transfer, but they are about, you know, technology transfer. They are about collaborative research and development, and they're about, I think, you know, health research and clinical trials. So we are not sending any materials across our borders. I cannot answer, I think, you know, in terms of breeding trials, but I will respond to say from, I think, you know, the genetic materials that I've collected, I think from the communities, I have actually shared the seeds of those with the ARC, with the hope that they will then help us, you know, maybe start that breeding trial, you know, for those local seeds. But I think that's what we have done. As well as, you know, the seed banks. I don't know whether, you know, Dr. You know, Kunene, you know, is aware, but I know that the materials that I've been collecting, I've given the seeds to the ARC to see if they can then help us, to have a controlled, I think, breeding of those seeds, and also the genetic, fingerprinting of those seeds. I think those would be, I think, what I would be able to respond to.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. Much appreciated. Dr. Kunene?
Ma'am, thank you so much. Thanks, Professor Matsabisa, because I was just going to touch up on the seed banks. There's a whole lot of people who've got a whole lot of little seed banks, but there's no one registered and accredited and a seed bank. But the ARC and all the people that it's working with, like Professor Matsabisa and a whole lot, pulling together what is very important local, our land races, they are trying, and also the exotic, the one that we are getting, and the crosses that are crossing with our land races. That is a very important step that we all in the cannabis must coordinate. And the agency that's coordinating it, it's ARC, and it's a government agency, and it can open doors to anyone to come. It's very important that we complete that work. That's what I can say. So the answer is no, there's no one registered seed bank in South Africa, but the ARC has been given that mandate, and they're in the process of starting to register some of the hemps, and they can easily extend to, and I think they've undertaken to extend to our local cultivars. It just needs private sector and all government sectors, especially in the agricultural space and in the research space, to finalize that work. So I'm calling on people to please come forward if you're a breeder, if you've got a bank, a small one, whatever relationship, to the ARC and to Professor Matsabisa and the CSIR, actually, to get it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kunene. I wanted to give Dr. Watson a chance to also respond quickly. We are only left with seconds. Dr. Watson, if you can respond.
So we don't have a seed bank in Jamaica. What we have happening is different growers will preserve their particular strains that they're developed. It's somewhat seen as somewhat of a capital, for lack of better words, their varieties that they have. There is a desire from the government level through our Cannabis Licensing Authority in collaboration with the Scientific Research Council to preserve those land strains and those what we would like to call endemic strains, if there's even any. There's that desire, but the ability to do so is limited because, again, we are not the ones that have been growing and preserving the materials over the years. It has really been the persons who have been prosecuted, and now you have a lot of foreigners coming in, and some are bringing in different varieties and strains into the island. So there is the desire to have some kind of reservoir, but we don't have that established, or the means to do it is not fully cleared or identified just yet.
Thank you so much for that response. I need to wrap up, but I see there's one or two questions for you, Dr. Watson. How do we get hold of Anti-Glucoma product from Jamaica? And then is this one of Prof. Louis Medicanja products?
Yes.
Maybe in 2 seconds, yes.
Yes. So the products are available. They are sold in our pharmacies here in Jamaica. And I believe with a bilateral relationship with South Africa, we should be able to export. They are registered for free sale. So I just think it's a matter of making those connections to work out the logistics of having it exported to South Africa.
Thank you so much. At this stage, I want to thank each and every one of you speakers for your brilliant information sharing with us. And we really look forward to industrializing cannabis, especially in Africa. We do grow the best of the best. Of course, I'll speak for South Africa in terms of cannabis, but I know Jamaica also, you do have very good, great cannabis growing in your country. And on that note, because I'm told that I don't have time, I would like to conclude this session by thanking each one of you and asking you to please keep safe and stay safe and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Dr. Wasin, enjoy the rest of your day because it's still morning with you. Thank you.